A Papa John's large pizza is only $15. Domino's in Canada, a large is $9.99 for a large, and Pizza Hut for a 14-inch create your own, it is $14.99. These pizzas aren't that expensive. So how did two pizzas cost Laszlo Hanyecz $500 million? It is the pizza transaction that changed the world, and it is both fascinating and heartbreaking all at the same time. Nowadays, we have all heard of Bitcoin, but if we back up roughly 13 years, it was essentially only known by a handful of tech guys that were tinkering around and playing with the network. At the time, Bitcoin was only a year old, having been created in January 2009 by Satoshi Nakamoto, who even to this day, we have no idea who they actually are. But that's a story for another day. But it all began on January 3rd of 2009 when Satoshi Nakamoto started the network by starting the very first block known as the Genesis block. To add a little bit of context and to add a little bit of a drama to the scenario, it's important to remember and go back in time to what was happening in January of 2009.
Its foundation as top Wall Street institutions topple under a mountain of debt.
When you step back for just a moment, consider the events of the last few days, it is truly unbelievable.
That's right. At the time, the entire global financial system was collapsing. Many thought that banks were going to dry out, that money was no longer going to come out from ATMs, and there was still a lot of uncertainty surrounding whether or not the banks would be bailed out. And Satoshi Nakamoto was well aware of this. In fact, in the very first block of Bitcoin, Satoshi embedded the tech. The Times, January 3rd, 2009, Chancellor on brink of second bailout for banks. And the invention of Bitcoin was ultimately a response to all of this, but I digress. I am not here to tell you that Bitcoin is the greatest money ever invented, and I'm also not here to tell you that you should go buy some Bitcoin, get it off the exchanges, and put it into cold storage, because at the end of the day, I am not a financial advisor. But what I am here to tell you is that 12 months after Bitcoin was first started, it was still essentially unknown. It was just a few tech nerds and a cryptograph nerds that were playing around and tinkering with the network online in different forums. But of course, that was all about to change. In fact, there was one man that was about to make a decision all the way back in 2009 that would cost him $500 million, but it would also change the world. It's May 22nd, 2010, 505 days since Satoshi Nakamoto started Bitcoin, and it's currently priced at only 0.004 cents per Bitcoin. At this point, it is still and only a underground movement. It is far from the household name that it is today. But even though it was far from reaching the status and the masses that it has reached today, it doesn't mean that there weren't still a die-hard, hardcore fans of Bitcoin. And that is where the protagonist of our story, Laszlo Hanyecz, enters the scene. At this point, it is 2009, and we can imagine that it is a warm spring evening down in Florida. And our protagonist, Laszlo Hanyecz, maybe just got home from work, and he decides that he is going to spend his evening on Bitcoin Talk, a forum of die-hard Bitcoin believers that simply chat online with one another. At this point, Bitcoin had still never been used anywhere in the world to actually purchase a physical good, to make a transaction for something, to purchase something with it. Very simple. But that was all about to change because Laszlo, on this warm spring evening, was hungry. More specifically, he was hungry for pizza. That's right. On May 22nd, 2010, Laszlo dropped a message in the forum saying, "I'll pay 10,000 Bitcoins for a couple of pizzas, like maybe 2 large ones, so I have some leftover for the next day. I like having a leftover pizza to nibble on later." Luckily for Laszlo, a British man by the name of Jeremy Sturdivant, who went by the name Jerkos, accepted the offer. Jeremy, in exchange for Laszlo's 10,000 Bitcoins, sent him not 1, but 2 pizzas from Papa John's, officially cementing the very first Bitcoin transaction that purchased something in the physical world, showing the potential for Bitcoin to be used as a medium of exchange.
The pizza was purchased at this Papa John's on Atlantic Boulevard. There's even a plaque on the wall with the date May 22nd, 2010, and a proclamation that Jacksonville is the home of the first Bitcoin purchase. Tim Mosbach is the general manager.
Now here's the thing. When Bitcoin hit its peak in 2021, when it went all the way up to $64,000 per coin, these 10,000 Bitcoins would be worth $640 million, an insane, unfathomable amount of money. Yes, of course, Laszlo still would have had to hold on to his coins for another 11 years. Highly unlikely, but at the end of the day, there is an alternate universe where Laszlo did hold on to his coins, and that $640 million would have been his. For the average person, myself included, I'm sure there's no doubt that there would be a lot of restless, sleepless nights thinking about what your life could have been if you had held on to those 10,000 Bitcoins. There's probably a lot of anger, a lot of frustration, a lot of resentment and regret. But actually, for Laszlo, there's none of that.
I'm offering 10,000 Bitcoins in exchange for some pizza. And somebody there said, hey, I'll take you up on that offer. So I sent him the 10,000 Bitcoin. I said, okay, here it is. I'm waiting for my pizza. And, he phoned it in, he paid with his credit card, and the pizza showed up at my door. Here you can see the original pizzas, and that's my daughter's hand. She was a year old.
Wow. So you paid 10,000 Bitcoins for one pizza?
It was two pizzas, actually.
Oh, you got two pizzas out of it.
And, maybe the person spent $30, $40, something like that.
What would it be worth today?
$80 million, I don't know.
$80 million.
A lot. People laugh at that, but at the time it wasn't worth anything.
Right.
Now, it's easy in this situation to feel bad for Laszlo. I myself do a little bit, but I bet that he still held on to some of his coins. He's not a public figure. I wasn't able to really track him down or find a lot of information on him, but hopefully he did still hold on to some of his coins, and he's still sitting on a nice amount of money, because I highly doubt that he spent his entire 10,000 Bitcoins just for two pizzas. He was an early adopter. He believed in Bitcoin, and so hopefully at the end of the day, he's still cleaned up. So rather than feeling sorry for him, we should actually be thanking him. It's because of this transaction, the very first transaction that ever took place using Bitcoin as a medium of exchange, Bitcoin has become what it is today, the greatest money ever invented. The hardest money that can't be tampered with. 21 million Bitcoin exist, and only 21 million will ever exist. And if it wasn't for this transaction, who knows what Bitcoin would be today? But it's not just me that thinks this. Because of this transaction, May 22nd is now known as Bitcoin Pizza Day, to mark the anniversary of the first ever real-world transaction that took place with Bitcoin. It's marked and celebrated every year throughout the world. Now, for some of you that are new or unfamiliar to Bitcoin, this might seem silly. And granted, for me, just 12 months ago, it did as well. But that all changed when I finally went down the Bitcoin rabbit hole that many know is very, very deep. You see, Bitcoin offers an antidote to the tyranny, control, and just awful economic policies that we're seeing around the world. Let's be real, I bet your grocery bill is a lot higher than it was just a year or two ago. Right? I know mine is. I bet going out, whether it is just for a drink, a fun time with friends, a meal, a movie, whatever it is certainly, wherever you are in the world, a lot more expensive than it was just 1 or 2 years ago. And on top of that, I bet that your increase in income hasn't nearly matched the increase in the cost of living. This is inflation, folks, something that I don't have to explain because we have all been living with it for several years now. It is the invisible tax that is taking our money and is making life more difficult. And it is all a result and first started because of the terrible COVID policies, economic COVID policies that took place starting back in 2020. Now, I will admit, being in Canada, I enjoyed the $2,000 a month CERB payment. It was nice. I got $12,000 from it, but we are all now paying the price for that. Inflation is not likely going anywhere, and considering that the entire money supply has increased by 40% in just the last 2 years alone, things might get even worse. But Bitcoin offers you a way out from centralized control, a way out from the excessive money printing, a way out of inflation, and a way into hard money, a store of value whose supply simply cannot be tampered with. And that is Bitcoin. So while Laszlo might not have $500 million, what he does have is a new holiday that started because of him. And the holiday acts as a reminder for what Bitcoin can provide us in the future, the potential that Bitcoin offers. And that is the hardest and greatest money ever invented. I'm leaving you on a bit of a cliffhanger, I know, but that is why you should watch this video here, which explains and tells the insane story of Michael Saylor, who is buying up all the Bitcoin. Thank you for watching. See you in the next one. Until then, peace.